Yo, bros, brosifs, jabronis, my little bronies, bro beans of broland in bro country and the broniverse. Now, you might be thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Well, I think we can assume that there's only bros out here because I just checked my channel analytics and there's exactly no females watching this channel right now. So, nice, boys. Let's make some music. All right. So, for a while now, I've been deep into the reproduction of DJ Turn It Up by Dimension, which is a lot harder than it sounds and a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But a lot of you requested me either through personal messages or on the comments of my channel to do one of the newer Dimension songs that features those really strong bass plucks. And I haven't quite figured out the full reproduction yet. It's coming. But in the meantime, I did want to take you guys into the process of making an advanced bass pluck because somehow, even though this sound is very prevalent in drum and bass, there's not that much information out there, or at least easily findable, on how to make a bass pluck that is not just a single saw wave with a little envelope modulation or something like that. But what a lot of you seem to be wondering is how to make those bigger, wider, nasty, either deep rumbling or high crunchy sort of bass plucks that you hear a lot more as the undertone in all the dance floor drum and bass that's coming out in the last like 10 years. So today I want to run you through one way to make a more advanced and more wider bass pluck sound in the style of artists like Metrik, Grafix, Dimension, Muzz, and a whole host of others, and give you quite some tools, just the way that I like to do on this channel, like for example in the kick and in the snare videos, to give you a lot of control over what the end result is, but to at the base understand the process of creation and then be able to freestyle on it with the tools that I'm going to give you. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, so we are here in Ableton in this mess of a project, but you can ignore everything else but this channel here, which is bass pluck version gazillion.9949. And just for context here, I've got a little beat going and I've got this bass pluck, which for all purposes right now needs to be a very deep and sort of funky bass pluck. And it sounds like this. So let's dive into how we've made this, and let's also see how we can make it, for example, more crunchy or even more bass heavy, or how we can completely change the timbre without losing the wideness and the power of this bass pluck. So let's turn everything here off. Start by having a look at the Serum patch. So what we're going to try to do today is we want to make a plucky sound, which is achieved by getting your envelopes in order to modulate the volume and also some of the effects that you're going to put on. But also, we want to have not one oscillator playing, but two oscillators playing that differ in both panning and tuning from each other. Meaning that we're going to create a pluck that lives also in the stereo field. And that's going to make it sound wide, it's going to make it sound a little bit more real, and it's basically going to give it that big feeling and sort of contribute to it sounding large and epic. So what we've got here is two digital wavetables. This is the Debussy, but we're going to run through some more wavetables to see how it affects it later. We've got two of these wavetables. They're exactly the same, but one of them is pitched at -3 octaves and a fine of 3. So that's a couple of cents up from the actual clean octave. And the other one is pitched down by 3. That means that they're both slightly detuned. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a slight difference in the right and the left ear, making the sound bigger than if it were just tuned completely fine. And it's also going to make it sound a little bit more realistic, like it was actually played on a bass guitar, because instruments are never perfect. And then what we've got here is we've got one of them panned hard to the left and one of them panned hard to the right. And you can ignore the modulation on there for now. We're going to talk about that in a bit. And the same goes for the bend. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And then we've got a filter here with a lot of drive and a cutoff that's also modulated to a plucky shape. And let's talk about the plucky shapes, because we're going to use 3 of them to modulate some different things. So let's look at the envelope. The first one, envelope 1, determines the amplitude. So this is really what at the base is going to make it not an elongated sound, but a pluck, right? So that's just going to do the bang instead of the bang. So this is routed to nothing but the amplitude, right? Because the envelope 1 in Serum is just the volume always. Then we've got a second envelope, which just follows a slightly less aggressive slope here with more decay, even though it does go down exponentially quite fast. And that is routed to this cutoff here. And note that the cutoff is actually bipolar, so that instead of going wah, it's going to go wow. So back and forth, which is going to contribute to it sounding more nice and plucky and sort of realistic. And then we've got envelope 3 here, which is a very short shape, which we're going to use to create some attack on the pluck. The reason for this envelope is that a real bass string is going to have a short period of extreme fast oscillation, and that's what we want to emulate here as well. And it's also going to give it some more of those higher tones that makes it slap. So we got envelope 3 routed to the master tuning. And the way that you do that, by the way, is you can just go to this matrix here and you can select envelope 3 here, and then you can select the master tuning here. And we've got it at a level of 54, but I played a little bit with the output, which is essentially going to keep this as the max range, but just utilize less percentage of that effect onto it. The difference is this. So it's going to give it more of that oomph. Right, and then there's also an LFO shape here, but we're not using that, so you can ignore that. And so what we've got here is we've got a sort of spectral, really weird wavetable that's oscillating on two sides of your ears slightly differently. And it's going to create a rawer, more wide sound that's going to make your pluck sound powerful and big. And then we have a couple of tools to play with. So as you can see, we have some macro knobs here that we can sort of play around with to make the sound different. So one of them is the open and close that's routed to the filter cutoff. So now the pluck is quite deep, because that's what I was personally going for while making this patch. But maybe you want some more of the top end. And what we're gonna see is that a lot of these digital or really distorted spectral wavetables, that they work really well, and they always have a lot of top end as well. And you can utilize that by filtering less. So we've got this routed to the filter cutoff here. So let's see what that does. Gonna make it more kangaroo-ish, more Tigger-ish kind of, or more knockish. So with that, you can determine more of the energy that you want. And for this wavetable is very sub-heavy, but in other wavetables, which we're going to scroll through later, you'll see that that really does change the feeling of the pluck too. And then the second thing that we have is we can make it sound either thinner or fatter. So we've got this macro that's routed to the pan of A and B. And so now we've got them hard panned left to right, but we can also decrease this, and it's going to make the sound more centered. It's going to make it thinner, but it's also going to make it more mono-focused, which you might want to solve some problems in your mix later. You probably won't hear much of that if you don't have headphones or very big monitor speakers, but it matters. And then what's really going to do a lot of creative work for you is these last two. So one of them is mapped to the warp knob of both of them, which we have several options here to play with that can really drastically affect the sound. And the other is mapped to the wavetable position of both of them, which means we can scroll through the different wavetable positions of both of these wavetables at the same time. And also that is going to give us a lot of power to change the sound. So now we've built this bass, we can use these two buttons to sort of find the timbre that we like and make it either more deep and rumbling, or make it more shelly, or make it more sort of high crunchy. So let's run through some things and see what we can do. As you'll see right now, we've got the bend plus minus function all the way down. So that actually really does something. It's made this Debussy saw wave more heavy. If we were to change that, you'll hear immediately that this pluck becomes a very different thing. And we can also scroll through the wavetable here. So you can see that already changes quite a bit, and you can pick whichever one you like based on what you're looking for. But of course, we can also change the wavetable. So let's see, for example, some of these spectral ones. Let's grab the electric guitar, for example. And of course, we have to change it on both of them. And let's just play again with these knobs. That's a lot more aggressive. We can go and get one of the monster ones, for example. Maybe we open it up more. Ooh, that's powerful. And then, of course, we have the bend mode on here, which is very interesting. But we can also change that, for example, to PWM, which is also going to yield some very interesting results. And so just like that, we can get different levels of gnarliness. And what happens a lot, I think, in dance floor production is that you'll start out by making a track with a rather basic pluck, and then as you develop your lead sound or maybe some of your mid-bass sounds, you can fine-tune with some of these macro knobs and some of these wavetable choices what you want the timbre of your bass pluck to be. And we've already scrolled through a few things, but I encourage you to go and try some of these options yourself, and you'll end up having a really great time and discovering so many cool variations of the bass pluck that are always going to sound fat and wide because we've got this detuning going on. And then so in post-processing, what we can do is we can filter it more. We can add a chord. We can add an octave on top of it. Make it sound a bit brighter. We can add an OTT. Maybe fill out some of these frequencies more. We can compress it. We can further get that rumbliness as well by just adding a low shelf. Adding a sub to it. We can go ahead and saturate it and do all kinds of cool things. For example, with either a saturator, an overdrive, or actually the amp also always works well for guitarish and bassy kind of sounds. Make it sound more rocky. Very distorted punk rock style. We can get an overdrive on there. Make it more crunchy. We can put an amp on there too with the different options. And if you wanted, you can always apply some more filtering later, take out some of those highs. And what we can do is we can further attenuate some frequencies, and maybe it's a good idea also to take out something around that 300 hertz area so that it doesn't clash with anything else and prevent some of that muddiness, because we want this bass to sound as crisp and as fresh as possible. And then the last thing, of course, that you can always do is add a little bit of reverb to it. And with Plucks, usually what you want is you want a low mix and a slightly lower decay so that it doesn't sound roomy to the point where it fades out the sound, because we want to have a powerful pluck, but it does add some body to the sound. So yeah, this is how to create a more advanced dance floor style, deep rumbling pluck. And as you can see, the possibilities here are endless. So let me know how you're gonna apply this, or if you have any other cool ideas for this kind of bass pluck, please let me know. I'm still figuring out exactly how Dimension does it. So if you have any idea, leave it down in the comments, because I need that shit, because I want to know that shit. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you're not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. It just helps me out so much, get my content out to other people like you who want to learn about drum bass production. Anyway, without further ado, bro beans, see you in the next video.